What's up, print hustlers? It's Luke from Printavo. Today we're going to talk about screen printing pricing. The number one question that print shops and screen printers have is, how do I set my prices? I mean, this makes sense. This is a topic that's every bit as difficult as it is controversial, and every shop that we talk to here at Printavo has a different strategy for pricing their work. It's really pretty amazing. Last year, I spent several months sort of combing through different ways to set your prices, and I developed a pricing matrix generator. It's not just a pricing matrix where you go and fill in your values. It's actually something that allows you to put in the costs of your business and get something that can give you like a pretty accurate pricing model. But it's something that is designed to let you take the lead, take the steering wheel, and actually control what happens with the pricing. I'm going to walk you through it. I'm going to show you how to use it. I'm going to show you what it can and can't do, and I'm going to give you some good ideas for how to maybe change it to fit your business, or just use it to check and see if you're making enough money using the pricing model that you're using. All right, let's go. So first, you're going to want to download the article. I'll drop a link that's down below for you. You can probably just Google Printavo pricing matrix generator, and that'll show up. Download it here. Now, when you get it here, you'll want to open it with Google Sheets. And from there, you want to click File, download Microsoft Excel. That will give you a nice file here, which you can open. So just pop that open. So here you go. This is the Printavo Price Matrix Estimator. You start here on this sheet. You can ignore this. We'll just delete it. If you have time, read this. Really, I mean it. It's got a lot of helpful details and things that can make sense of this that maybe this video won't. And it won't take you that long. It's about a 20 minute read all the way through. This is the in-depth and detailed instructions that you can use to go back and make sense of things if you're struggling to understand everything a little bit. This is also in the blog article, so don't feel like you need to read it on the spreadsheet. It's just there as a way to keep everything in one simple place. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to start with our profitability goal. Profitability is huge. I mean, if you're not making a profit, you're losing money, right? Like, this is why we brought Mike Michalowicz from Profit First to Print Hustlers 2019, so you can figure out how to make real money. But the reason we start with this goal is because it really sets the tone for the rest of your pricing. If you want to make, 50% profit, you've got to start with that as your goal. You're not going to be able to figure it out each time you do a job. You've got to really start and focus in. So, step one, pick a profitability goal. We'll start with 50% because why not? Start with the highest value you can, right? Now, you need to enter your monthly costs. You want to enter like your rent, your payroll, utilities, insurance, equipment leases, phone and internet, subscriptions for software and different things. And there's just other 3 extra lines for you to add your fixed costs. That could be anything really. What you really just want to do is take a look at your bills and figure out how much money you're like actually spending every month. And then that will give you this number here, your total fixed costs. The spreadsheet does something kind of fun here. It tells you your targets. So these are your break-even targets here. Your break-even targets are like the amount of money you need to make every day just to get the fixed costs met, just to scrape by, just to, pinch pennies. Like, this is like the bare minimum. And the reason I'm showing you that is because it lets you kind of understand what you need to do just to survive. Your revenue targets, now, these are where the money is. This is the number you want to aim for. So in our, sort of idealized shop, they're making around $320,000 in revenue a year just to cover their monthly fixed costs. Whether you think that's a lot or a little depends on where you are in your business, but the goal here is just to break things down and sort of systematically show you what's happening. Next, we're going to talk about your shop's production capacity, and this is where things get really interesting and specific for your shop. So the first thing we're going to talk about are the impressions per hour. Now, you may not actually know this number, and that's okay if you don't know it. You can ballpark and guess this number. A lot of shops are around 450. If you're like printing off a manual, you're probably lucky if you get 150. You're probably really hauling if you're going that fast. Whereas if you have a bunch of manuals in your shop, you may be doing, thousands of impressions an hour. The goal here is just to pick a number that seems comfortable for you. I would suggest 650 is a good figure if you use an automatic press, but if you're in doubt, go lower, right? So like 400 impressions per hour, totally reasonable. You can also select the utilization rate. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. It's important. The number of operating hours per day and the number of presses in operation. So pick how long you're open. If you're open 8 hours a day, you're open 8 hours a day. And pick how many presses you typically put on one job. So This doesn't mean you want to pick 5 presses because you have 5 presses in your shop. It means if you typically use 2 presses to do one job, you would pick 2 presses. So it's not your overall shop's production capacity, it's your shop's production capacity for like the job you want to quote right now. So from there, you're going to get a bunch of numbers down here that are calculated based off what you've given us. So we said these are our costs, this is the profit goal, here's how many roughly impressions, prints per hour I can do, here's my utilization rate, we'll talk more about that in just a moment, and here are the numbers that we want. So the top number is the minimum. This is the bare minimum you can get by charging in an 8-hour day just to meet your break-even target. The idealized rate is what you should be charging if you want to hit your revenue target. The cost per impression minimum is the absolute minimum you can get by charging for like one print. With the utilization rate included, this is what it actually looks like when we think about downtime. It begs a question then, what is utilization? Your utilization rate is the amount of time that your press isn't printing. Like 30% of the hours your shop opens seems crazy low, but it's actually pretty good. Mark Coudray has a pretty informative video about this, and he talks about how a lot of shops operate between maybe 12 and 33% efficiency. They're only utilizing their shop, at 100% of its value 33% of the time, if not even less than that. So what happens is you develop these hourly rates thinking that you're always printing, right? You're printing 8 hours a day, when actually you're probably printing 2 or 3 at the most. So your numbers get kind of screwed up. What happens is you think that you only really need to make, $111 an hour to cover your costs. And, well, if we add the profit, then, it becomes $166. Well, if you actually are hitting your profitability goal and understanding the utilization, your rate might be more like $500 an hour, because a lot of the time you're sitting around the shop, you're doing administrative work, you're setting jobs up, you're doing all kinds of things that aren't printing, and maybe they're making you money, but they're not revenue driving and you're not charging money for them. But the goal here is to capture some of those fixed costs that are happening in the background when you're not printing and put that into the price. So I'll show you how that's done in the next part. So the next tab, we're going to look at the specifics. And this really lets you break a job down specifically, so you can't get away with not using this tab. It's really important. The thing we're going to do is essentially price out the garments here. So the fourth step is pricing your shirts. Let's say this is a $5 shirt. We want to add a markup. You can add whatever markup you like. Some people like to add a 50% markup. Some people like to add a 10% markup. This is something your shop will have to play with on its own. The higher the price of the garment, the lower the markup will go probably, just because as the markup gets higher, the garment becomes really expensive. But if it's a really inexpensive garment, you've got more wiggle room there. Maybe you can raise the markup a little bit more. So that's something you'll have to discuss within your team and figure out yourself, but this just gives you the tool to do it. From there, we're going to set hourly rates for every part of our setup and our breakdown. This is tricky because it's something you probably haven't thought about before, but it's really important. There are 3 parts to this, right? There are 3 things that really happen outside of printing. The first is administration. Administration is everything that happens before the job gets into your shop, okay? It's intake, sales, discovery, talking to the person on the phone, emailing back and forth with them, figuring things out. It's really the whole process of administering the job so that it can come into your shop and make you money. You need to charge for this. This is something you are paying people to do, or you're doing it yourself and you need to get paid for it. So set a rate for that. Let's say it's $40 an hour. You could make this really simple and just say, okay, I've got 3 or 4 administrators, they each make $22 an hour. There's 3 of them, that adds up to 66. That's your hourly rate for administration. The second part of this is artwork. For artwork, you simply set another hourly fee, and then you enter the time that it takes to do the artwork. And this could be like revisions or, drawing new art, outsourcing art, however you do it, and whatever rate you charge. Now, the next part is the screens, so setup. This is the entire process of making and breaking down screens and setting the screens up on the press. This is something you need to charge for. This is tricky. Some shops have a flat fee for it. In this model, what I've decided to do is say, hey, it costs this much in our shop to set up an hour of a job, right? There's this many hands touching it, and those people are paid this much. So you will have to determine that rate on your own. You'll tell the spreadsheet how many minutes it took to break down and set up the job. That is going to vary. I would suggest that you have something like an estimate for how long a job with one color will take, how long a job with two colors will take, how long a job with 6 colors will take. And you could build pricing matrices separately for that, just by saying, okay, a job with one screen takes 20 minutes, a job with 2 takes 30, a job with 6 takes an hour. You do the math. It's your shop. Is one size does not fit all here. So from there, what happens is you have a setup cost. Your setup cost is basically just whatever your rates are that you've put in, and then the amount of time. So here, for the numbers we've got, it's $147.50 in your shop to set up and break down, administer a job. That is not your setup fee, but it's the whole fee for taking the job into your shop, doing the art, and actually setting it up. So think about that. That's a lot of money. $147. It's probably more in your shop too. But that needs to be factored into the cost of the shirts that you're printing. And that's exactly what we do. So finally, without much ado, this is the matrix that gets generated. There's some interesting things to note, and I think it's really instructive to see this. First of all, what happens if you print one shirt? It's $154? That can't be right. Well, actually it is, because of the cost and time it took to get that job into the shop. But you notice as you go up, if we're at 20 shirts, oh, it's actually $14.26 for one shirt. Wow, that's really good. Now the setup costs are starting to break down over the quantity and the time it's taking to do the job. Now, if we get up to 100 or 108 or 96 shirts, it starts to become $8, $8.25. You can start to really see the effect of quantity breaking down. And if we get down to 10,000 shirts, it's $6.90. Wow, it went really, really low. But you'll notice it doesn't actually ever go below the price of the garment because you have to cover the price of the garment. Now, there's a couple cool things to note on this page. One, you can change this number anytime you want. You can always change the quantity number, and it basically will make a new calculation. So just to show you, if I change 4, this is the quantity, to 60, now these are updated in real time to show me that number, which is super cool because if you just want to quote someone a couple different types of shirts or a couple different numbers, say maybe they want 12, and they want to see what 36 would cost, and they also want to see what 128 would cost. You can show them that really quickly, just like, okay, so with this many screens, it would probably be around, $13.50 per shirt, okay? So that's a really cool tip that's very helpful here. But you can also use the quick quoter to do the same thing. So if you enter the number, colors/print locations, so let's say it's a 6-color job, and then they maybe want 80 shirts, based on the info you put in earlier, it'll $15.67 per shirt. Now, the reason this is set up this way and the reason this is useful is because you can take all the matrices you generate here and put them in Printavo. Now, that's really handy because you could set up all kinds of unique parameters and very carefully control everything so that you could see when your jobs are really profitable or whether they're close to profitable or not. So that's really the value in the spreadsheet. I think I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the other things in here soon, but the basics of it are all here. You set your rates, you set your utilization, you set the specifics, and then you get a matrix. It's super easy, it's super fun. I think you should play with it, discover things that don't and do work for you, and send me feedback because I need your help, and we can make this thing a lot better. All right, Print Hustlers.